Welcome to educator.com. This lesson is about test-taking strategies. It's part 1. This test-taking strategy is about finding needed information. Test-taking strategies are very important because tests are written a certain way, and if you can understand how the tests are written, it can really help you to do better. For example, we're going to be looking at strategies for solving multiple choice questions. A lot of times students take multiple choice tests and they will do less work because they know that one of the answers is the correct answer and the answer has been provided. But also realize that the test takers keep this in mind and will create trick answers. So it's very important to read the questions carefully. However, another pitfall is that multiple choice tests can be very long and can be very tiring. So if you have some shortcut strategies that will not lead you to pick incorrect answers but will actually help you to save time and energy, that can also be very helpful. So let's go into the first strategy, finding needed information. You want to first ask yourself, what do I know about this problem and how would I solve the problem? Sometimes if you find the answers confusing or the problem confusing, you may want to not look at the answers, especially if the answers are all very close and you feel that you're taking a random guess. So let's look at the example. Jenny stands on a scale while holding her dog. The scale reads 175 pounds. What missing piece of information is needed to find the weight of Jenny's dog? Well, what do we know? We know that the scale reads a total of 175, and we would want to think about how to solve the problem. Well, the total is 175, so that means Jenny plus the weight of her dog would equal 175. So what piece of information is missing? Well, we're missing the information of either how much Jenny weighs or how much her dog weighs. If we know how much Jenny weighs, we could substitute that in for Jenny and find the missing information about the dog. If we knew how much the dog weighed, we could substitute in that information and find the missing piece of information, which is how much Jenny weighs. So here, some questions may even ask you which piece of information is missing. And you want to read through the problem carefully and think about what the question is asking and how you would go about solving the problem. Let's try this example. A distributor had 4,000 games. It sent the same number of games to each store. What missing piece of information is needed to find how many games each store received? Well, if you know that this distributor has 4,000 games and he's sending them out the same number to each store, what we're missing here is the number of games that are either sent to the store. We could divide by that to find out how many stores, or we're missing the piece of information of how many stores there are. So we know we're going to be dividing. Let's look at our answers. The number of customers. Well, the word problem doesn't say anything about customers. It does talk about stores, but not the individual customers who will be shopping at the stores. So it's a very good idea to cross out the answer so that later, if you do come back to the problem, or if you do decide at the end to take a guess, you're taking a more educated guess and you've gotten rid of the answers that do not make sense. So I'm going to cross that one off. How far the games are sent. Well, that has nothing to do with the number of games, so I'm definitely going to cross that one out. The number of stores, well, that one looks good, so far I'm going to leave it, but I'm going to read through to the end. The cost of a game. Well, we definitely know that we don't need to know the cost of the game because this says nothing about money. It just talks about numbers, so we can cross that off. So although we had 2 pieces of missing information, only one of these answers is going to make sense. So C is my answer. Let's try another example. George bought 3 shirts, some sandals, and a pair of pants. He paid with a $100 bill. What missing piece of information is needed to find how much change George should receive? Well, we don't know the cost of the shirts. We don't know the cost or how many sandals he bought or the pair of pants. So there are quite a few pieces of information that are missing. But if it's only saying that we are missing one piece of information needed to find how much change George should receive, let's look through our answers and see if there's just one piece of information that would give us the answer. The number of pairs of sandals. Well, it's true. I don't know how many sandals he bought. It just says some sandals. And I also don't even know how much they cost. So it seems that for that answer, I would have to know multiple pieces of information. So I don't think that's going to be my answer. But I'm going to leave it because it's possible. The total number of items. Well, we don't know how much the total number of items would cost, so that wouldn't really help me find the answer either. The cost of one shirt. Well, that might get me there because I know I bought 3 shirts and if I knew the cost of the shirt, but then that still doesn't tell me about the sandals or the pants. The total cost. Okay, let's think about that. If I knew the total cost of all the items, I could subtract it from 100 minus total cost, and that would tell me the change. So although all of the answers would be helpful, D is the piece of information and the only piece of information that would be able to give me the answer directly. You'll also notice on multiple choice questions that they will tell you to choose the best answer. That means that other answers may sometimes be possible, but you want to choose the best answer. So although all of these pieces of information were missing, this one was the best answer because with that answer, we could find the exact change. Let's try another testing strategy called using mental math. So as I was talking about before, a lot of times your multiple choice questions are very long in number. So you're going to start getting tired. So if it's possible to use mental math to take out certain answers that are not going to make sense, you may be able to save yourself the energy of doing the calculations for every single problem. So we're going to be using mental math to help us eliminate unreasonable answers. And using the mental math process can also help you answer questions a lot faster. You buy 5 notebooks for $2.95 each. How much do you pay? Well, let's go through here. Look, this should be D. And let's look at our answers. First, without using mental math, I can already tell that one answer doesn't make sense. It says I'm buying 5 notebooks at $2.95 each. So how much would I pay? So I'm definitely not going to be paying $2.95 because that would only cover for one notebook. So already I can cross that answer off. And now I would say 2 times 95, $2.95 is close to $3. So if I were to do 5 times 3, that would be about $15. But notice I'm rounding up. I'm taking the $2.95 and rounding it up to 3. So that means at the most it would be $15. It should not be anything over $15. And look at answer D. It's over $15. So I also know I can cross that one off. So now I've saved myself a lot of energy and I can look back to here. Just B and C. Well, now you can take the time to do 2 times 95 times 5 and find your answer. Or you can think about how much less is $2.95 than $3. It's 5 cents less. And how much less for the total? 5 times 5 is 25 cents. So if you were to take $15 and subtract 25 cents, you would have $14.75. And there's your answer, $14.75. If this is confusing to you, it's always safer to go and complete the math because you'd rather get the question right. But at this point, you've already canceled 2 answers and your chances of getting the correct answer are a lot better. So then you could go 295 times 5. It's 25 here, 45, 47, and 10 and 14, 1475. So here we use mental math to estimate and cross out the unreasonable answers, and also to think about if you were to estimate this to $3, how much over would it be? It would be over 25 cents. So then you could say $15 minus 25 cents. Let's try simplifying negative 76 plus negative 55 plus 76. Now when you're looking at equations, expressions, don't jump right into it right away. Look at it ahead of time and think about it because that could save you a lot of work. In this example, for many people might start looking negative 76, negative 55 and start doing the calculations. However, if you look ahead, negative 76 and positive 76 are opposites. They could just cancel out right away because they go to 0, leaving you with your answer with barely any calculations, negative 55, and there's your answer. You buy 3 t-shirts for $8.99 each. What is the total cost? So this is similar to our first example. I'm buying 3 t-shirts for $8.99 each. Well, I'm going to estimate that $8.99 to a flat $9 to help me cancel out any unreasonable answers. 3 times 9 is $27. So do I have anything that's about 27? This one is too low. This one is about 27, but I'm only under a cent each. So this one seems a little low too. If you're not sure though, don't cancel that out. You should only cross out answers that you're absolutely sure are wrong. So your last step might just be to do the multiplication of $8.99 times 3. It's 27, 27, 29, 24, and 26, $26.97. You could have also said to yourself, well, since you rounded up, there's no way it could be more than 27. So that might have helped you cancel out that. And so even without doing any math, you might have been able to pick the answer C. And remember from our first problem, we talked about by overestimating, I added an extra cent. So let's take $27 and subtract 3 cents, 1 cent for every t-shirt. That would get you to $26.97. So that's also a process of using mental math. We've gone over several different ways that you could use mental math. First off, the easiest would be estimating. And then you could break up the numbers and think about how much you overestimated or whether you're underestimating. During the week, you deposit $45 in your bank account, withdraw $20, and withdraw $40. What is the total change in your account balance? So here you need to understand the words deposit, withdraw, and withdraw. Oh, I think this means that we're going to say D is $5. Okay. Well, if you understand withdraw and withdraw, that will tell you that it's minus 20 and minus 40. And deposit is adding 45. Well, if you're subtracting 40 and subtracting 20, aren't you subtracting 60? And that's more than what you're adding. So that means that overall, you've spent more money than you have. So you could go through and take out all the positives. And that will get rid of D for you. And now you're thinking about your total withdrawn. Well, your total withdrawn is negative 60, which is kind of close to 45. So it's not that you've lost a lot of money. You've just overspent a little. So we could definitely take out negative 105. And now if you think about it, this negative 60 matches this answer B, but that's not thinking about that you're adding in $45. So we could also take out B. And so the only reasonable answer left is C. And that is the correct answer. Negative 60 plus 45 is negative 15. So here we were able to cancel out quite a few answers before looking for our final answer.